nuts to this.
One of my fondest memories as a child is my 8th birthday party. In the early summer of 1983, my family had moved to a nice neighborhood just outside of St. Louis, Missouri called Chesterfield. Let's hear it for the Redbirds! And I was having trouble making friends due to school not having started yet. So my parents invited about a dozen neighborhood kids who lived near us to go with us to Showbiz Pizza. Think Chuck E. Cheese, but with a redneck bear as a mascot instead of a mouse. For a party, pizza, and games. Afterwards, we went back to our house and a few kids stayed over to watch Time Bandits on HBO. It was a magical day that still brightens my mood whenever I think about it. But despite this, I have rarely rewatched Time Bandits since my childhood. I think the last time I caught it was at a Greenwood party close to 20 years ago, and we were too busy talking, drinking, eating, and just joking around for me to actually pay attention to it and fully enjoy it. So now, decades later, I decided to sit down and watch Terry Gilliam's 1981 dwarfish masterpiece, Time Bandits, with an adult's perspective and a much finer appreciation for good cinema.
What is Time Bandits?
Time Bandits is the brainchild of vivid dreamer, animator, director, and Python Terry Gilliam. It's a 1981 fantasy escapist adventure film starring James Bond, Olive Oil, Bilbo Baggins, Mona Robinson, Basil Fawlty, Maester Aemon, R2-D2, half the Nelwyn band members in Willow, Sir Galahad the Pure, Sark, Ulrich of Kraganmore, and some kid who never really started anything else either before or after, well, except for a shitty BBC production of a Virginia Woolf novel, which is a shame. That kid was really good in this movie. But I digress. Terry Gilliam came up with the idea for Time Bandits while waiting for his masterpiece Brazil to get its funding. Wanting to make a movie about the craziness of our awkwardly ordered society and the desire to escape it through whatever means possible, or impossible for that matter, he wanted the film to be entirely from a kid's point of view, seeing the world a little more wondrous than adults do, but he didn't think that a child could carry a whole movie by himself, so he came up with the idea to surround the kid with a gang of sorts, but they had to be people of the same height, since if the boy was surrounded by tall adults, it would make him look helpless and in need of protection. And it just grew from that, says Gilliam. The budget for the flick was a scant $5 million, provided mostly by ex-Beatle George Harrison, who also wrote the pretty catchy theme song for the movie, Dream Away. Gilliam and co-Pythoner Michael Palin didn't care that they only had $5 million. They wrote the script for a $30 million production, then just used ingenuity and crafty special effects to make the movie seem much larger than it was. The studios of the day didn't believe in the movie though, especially because the main cast was made up of dwarfs, and after the complete failure of a shitty Chevy Chase movie that had come out a few years before, featuring a lot of dwarf actors that bombed at the box office, they incorrectly thought that little people equal little returns. For some reason, nobody thought that Under the Rainbow failed simply because it was awful. So it took a lot of shopping around before Avco Embassy Pictures, the company that brought us the Americanized 1955 heavily dubbed Godzilla, Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, and the greatest movie starring Scott Baio ever made, Zapped, stepped up because they thought the movie would be a hit. And it was. Released in November of 1981, Time Bandits was the #1 movie for 4 weeks straight, and eventually brought in a total of $42.4 million, and made Gilliam a household name in the States, outside of his role as animator in the Monty Python troupe.
Plot.
We begin the movie by bearing witness to 11-year-old Kevin's mundane British life, ruled by two parents who only care about buying the newest technologically wonderful kitchen appliance in order to keep up with the neighbors, and terrible BBC game shows like Your Money or Your Life, which apparently kills its contestants who fail to win the games in question. Kevin has a very vivid imagination, despite his parents' complete lack of any, and he loves history, with his idols being the mythic Agamemnon and the legendary Robin Hood, who in this universe actually exist. One night, while lying in bed, Kevin appears to have a strange dream wherein a knight on horseback breaks through his wardrobe and destroys his bedroom. The farce that the knight ran off into, along with the destruction of the room that he caused, are gone in the blink of an eye. Kevin then, like any child with any sort of imagination, believes that this sort of thing will happen regularly, and thusly prepares a knapsack of tools as he goes to bed the following night, so that he can follow whatever may come out of his wardrobe next. Some may find this stupid, but I can remember my childhood very well and found it to be pretty dang realistic to a child's mind. Instead of a knight, though, 6 small men crawl out of his furniture that following evening, and they have with them a fantastical large worn map. Using the map, they open a corridor that didn't exist prior to them pushing on a wall in Kevin's bedroom, and all of them just barely escape a phantasmagoric, giant, floating, glowing, and disembodied head that chases after them, demanding that they return the map. Instead of doing this, the 7 small humans continue to run and fall through a hole in the space-time continuum, finding themselves in the middle of the Napoleonic Wars in Castiglione, Italy, 1796. And so Kevin joins them as they loot Napoleon's stolen art and gold reserves, meet Robin Hood and his awful and diseased merry men, who rob from the time-traveling troupe themselves since, well, that's always been Mr. Hood's deal, and steal Agamemnon's crown, apparently right before the poor bastard is murdered by his cheating wife and her lover.
Read some Greek myths, people.
Good times for all. During all this, Kevin learns his companions' names, Randall, Fidget, Strutter, Og, Wally, and Vermin, and that they used to work for the Supreme Being, making things like trees and bushes, while the big guy himself worked on men and women, good and evil, and platypuses. Platypi? But then they discovered holes in the back-end code of the universe. It is a rather complex thing, after all, and nothing's perfect. Instead of having to deal with fixing these bugs, they decide to take advantage of them and use them to rob various historical figures of their riches. Unbeknownst to the Time Voyagers, though, they are constantly being watched and manipulated by the personification of evil, a nefarious and malicious being who has been trapped in the Fortress of Ultimate Darkness by the Supreme Being an eternity ago, and he wants the map of the holes of reality in order to escape and recreate the universe in his own image, with technology instead of nature being the foundation of his creation. This evil is kind of a dick. He's quick to blow up his servants if they ask him simple questions such as,
well, he created you, so he can't be totally...
or,
But why, if that's the case, are you unable to escape from this fortress?
even though he'll then answer those questions with his own mental gymnastics added to them for his remaining sidekicks.
Spoilers.
So evil tricks the bandits into traveling to the Time of Legends to find and steal the most fabulous object in the world, which supposedly waits for them in the Fortress of Ultimate Darkness. After a few more adventures featuring the Titanic, an ogre with a bad back, a tattooed giant who apparently hates Muppets, and some insquabbling amongst the group, they find the Fortress of Ultimate Darkness and unwittingly deliver the map into the hands of evil himself. This is when things get a bit nightmarish for kids. I mean, I was 8 when I watched this, and especially this part of the movie, kind of freaked me out. But watching it now, I find the finale to be a goddamn masterpiece in imaginative sequences, especially knowing the budget for the film. Anyway, so the bandits are placed into a dangling cage far above the ground, left to die in Evil's fortress, while Evil and his remaining crew go over how best to change the world to their liking. Using Kevin's survival pack, the bandits are able to free themselves in a most harrowing way and then steal the map back. Well, Og did get turned into a pigman during the stealing portion. They then use the biggest hole in the universe, which is apparently right in Evil's fortress, to go out and bring back cowboys, knights, ancient archers, a tank, and a spaceship to try and stop Evil once and for all. Well, Kevin had to kind of push for this, as the rest of the bandits wanted to turn tail and run the fuck out of there like mini Usain Bolts. During the final and utterly amazing battle, Evil picks off the interloping heroes one by one until there's just the bandits left. Well, minus Fidget, unfortunately.
But he's dead, Randall. Fidget's dead.
Then the Supreme Being swoops in after tracking the bandits down, turns Evil into charcoal, fixes up the bandits, and orders them to tidy the place up. If there's one thing he hates, it's mess.
One thing I can't stand, it's mess.
That's when one of the greatest deliveries of one of the greatest exchanges of all time takes place.
Why did they have to die?
You might as well say, why do we have to have evil?
Yes, why do we have to have evil?
Ah. I think it's something to do with free will.
Then Kevin gets sent home and wakes up in his bed due to the fire department chopping his bedroom door down. Then his parents explode after deliberately touching a remaining piece of evil, and then the fire crew and a reincarnation of Agamemnon leave the poor boy behind to get tossed into the British orphanage system.
The end. Thoughts.
A lot of Time Bandits affected me deeply as a kid. These parts made me laugh while watching them now, as I'm pretty sure Gilliam intended. But as a child, watching Kevin get taken away from Agamemnon when he didn't want to go, bandits just leaving the lovers tied to a tree in the forest in Sherwood, and especially the final battle and Fidget's flattening.
But he's dead, Randall. Fidget's dead.
When I was 8, I remember feeling stunned and then appalled at all these dark instances in the movie, but as I now realize, that was exactly what Gilliam wanted kids to feel watching it. It was supposed to be an unsafe Brothers Grimm-like fairy tale, where the heroes have to go through some pretty terrible and dark times in order to win in the end. They need to be strong and persevere, otherwise there's no real hero's journey, nothing to overcome. At its heart, Time Bandits is a modern fairy tale, featuring a boy dealing with uncaring and inept parents, just wanting to escape into his imagination. It's a sort of really twisted remake of Alice in Wonderland, just with 100% more dwarfs. But thanks to Gilliam and Palem's deft script, it's also a cautionary commentary about the perils of a society obsessed with consumption and the newest technologies, something that has only become more relevant in the decades since it was first released. Gilliam is well noted for hating having to have grown up. He wanted Time Bandits to be a new fairy tale for kids, wherein even if the children in the story go through some horrible ordeals and come out stronger and wiser for it, they're still scarred, and they don't have anyone but themselves to 100% rely on. He wanted to tell a story wherein there is true evil in order to try and prepare kids for the real world. He was sick of the neutered stories that he was reading to his own child at the time that had no fangs, as it were. A Red Riding Hood book where grandma was never eaten by a wolf, the hunter wasn't a hunter, and there was no danger at all. Gilliam also made it a point in the flick to show that our heroes are almost always placed upon pedestals that they should not be on. He despises celebrities and sports heroes who don't understand the power that they have over kids who idolize them. In Time Bandits, all of Kevin's heroes are disappointing in some way, giving the children of the audience a harsh life lesson that will hopefully assist them throughout their lives. The biggest point that Gilliam wanted to make was that home for Kevin, the safe place that most movies and books try to tell kids is the bestest place in the world, is usually mundane and rubbish compared to what is actually out there waiting to be discovered and experienced. Read the May 1982 Twilight Zone magazine interview with Gilliam. It's very enlightening. Rewatching Time Bandits now, I love so much about this movie. The characters, for one, are absolutely marvelous, especially Kevin. I connected with him as a kid since he acted and reacted to the events around him almost exactly how I would. I love how Kevin is the smartest, most resourceful, and most caring character in the entire flick, even more so than the Supreme Being, who is an uncaring douchebag here.
Well, I am the nice one.
I like how Kevin immediately learns the bandits' names upon getting caught up in their affairs and treats them as his friends despite only just meeting them and despite them essentially kidnapping him from his warm, safe bed and taking him to extremely dangerous places like war-torn Italy and Middle Ages Britain. As a kid, it made perfect sense to me. I mean, hey, they were his friends. They were all the same height and helped each other out, right? But as an adult, I found it funny that the immortal and adult in appearance dwarfs acted like children. They steal the map in order to rob people? That's their plan? 11-year-old Kevin even finds this way of thinking ridiculous. Everybody else in this movie is perfect for their roles too. From the bandits to evil to Robin Hood to that ogre and his wife. Perfect casting. The overall tone of the film is great as well. It is a children's movie with a child as the lead on an adventure that a child would find wondrous and a bad guy who is the personification of evil, but who isn't, say, Freddy Krueger terrifyingly evil. But despite being a children's movie, it's just an entertaining as hell flick overall. Not once watching it now did I think to myself, ugh, only in a kid's movie will bullshit like this be allowed. But I'll be the first to admit that Terry Gilliam hasn't always hit home runs. Dr. Parnassus and Zero Theorem come to mind, but when he gets something right like this, it's f***ing glorious. I recall as a kid watching this movie and being so disappointed by the ending because of Gilliam's desire to not let home be Kevin's safe place after his harrowing journey through time and space. Home was supposed to be the goal of crazy odysseys like this. The Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland emphasized this. The ending to Time Bandits was bullshit to 8-year-old me. I mean, Kevin told his dumbass parents not to touch the evil, but they didn't listen, and now he's all alone. I was so frustrated at the time. Now, I find it hilarious because I just know that my parents would still touch the evil just like Kevin's, even if I explicitly told them not to, just because. So, did I misremember Time Bandits? No. Absolutely not. In fact, I find it even more entertaining now that I'm older and understand all the historical and mythical times and places that the bandits travel to. I get the jokes about the supreme being and evil that went over my head as a child, and I can appreciate the detail, love, and attention that this flick was soaked in. It's like a Bugs Bunny cartoon from the classic era in that way. Kids think it's funny and laugh at the silliness of it all, but adults get all the dark humor, gags, and parodies that go way above children's heads. If you haven't watched this movie in a few years or decades, or especially if you've never seen it before, do yourself a favor and check it out. I could spend all day rubbing this good boy's belly. Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy? Who's a good movie? Telling you how great it is, but just go see it for yourself. Unless you suffer from achondroplasiophobia, like a friend of mine, then this film will give you nightmares.
Very, very much. Awful people.